students. Myself Priyanka Varvi. I'm your biology teacher. As we all know that there's a pandemic situation out there and we all are stuck in our homes. So we will be connected to you by the means of this YouTube channel. So I request you all to please subscribe our channel and like our videos. We teachers are taking a lot of efforts so that you won't miss out on your studies. So please do subscribe the channel and like our videos. So let us begin with biology chapter number 7, that is cell division. Now we know that the life of all multicellular organisms starts or begins with a single cell, that is called as zygote. This zygote, it undergoes cell division and becomes an embryo. Embryo then develops into organelles and then into organs, and a living organism is formed or a living organism is born. Now the cells which are present in the living organism, those cells, they undergo cell division and this results in the growth of the living organism. This result into the growth of living organism. For example, when the organism is a small baby, at that time the body of that organism and the organs which are there in the body of the organism, those are small, right? So after a period of time, that living organism starts growing. This happens due to the cell division which occurs inside the body of the organism. So you can say that the growth of an organism depends upon the cell division. The cell theory states that every new cell arises from the pre-existing cell. Every new cell which is born, it is born or it is formed from the cell which is already existing or from the cell which already exists. So in this chapter, we will be understanding or we will be studying what is cell cycle, what is cell division, types of cell division, that is mitosis and meiosis, and what phases occur during the cell division. Let us begin with the cell cycle first. Now the cell cycle, it is the series of the events by which a cell duplicates its genome and it synthesizes constituents and eventually divides to form two daughter cells. Now the process of this, the process in which the cell gets divided into two new daughter cells, that process is called as cell division. Now or cell cycle. For example, if this is a cell, it has nucleus and other cell organelles in it. Now this cell, it grows, and when it grows, the organelles which are present inside it along with the nucleus gets duplicated. The organelles which are present inside the cell and the nucleus, they get duplicated or they get divided inside. After that, the cell tends to divide in this way. The cytoplasm of the cell tends to divide and eventually it divides into two daughter cells. This process is called as the cell cycle. In this process, there is a sequence of events. This is the sequence of events. First, the cell enlarges, it grows, and then the nucleus and organelles get divided or duplicated, and then two new daughter cells are formed. This sequential or series of events is called as cell cycle. Now in this series of events, what happens? The cell, it duplicates the genome or the organelles which is present inside it, and it synthesizes the constituents which are present inside it. The formation of constituent, formation of proteins occurs inside the cell, and after that, after the whole process is completed, the cell then eventually divides to form two new daughter cells. This process or this series or this series of events or this sequence of events is called as cell cycle. Now this cell cycle has two main phases. It has two main phases. Or cell division, it has two main phases. First is the interphase and second is the M phase. So in this diagram, as you can see, this whole red colored arrow which I have shown here, This is the whole interphase, and this one is the M phase. So the cell division or cell cycle has two main stages or two main phases. First is the interphase and second is the M phase. Now during this interphase, what happens? The cell undergoes growth. The whole interphase, the cell starts growing and it prepares itself for the cell division. And in the M phase, the cell gets divided or the cell undergoes division. So in the interphase, the cell prepares itself for division or it grows, and during the M phase, the cell eventually divides into two new daughter cells. Now let us understand the different phases of the cell cycle with the help of this diagram. Now see here, as you can see, this is the cell cycle. As I said, there are two main phases of the cell cycle or cell division. First is the interphase and second is the M phase. This M phase, it stands for either meiosis or mitosis. So interphase and M phase. Now this interphase is further divided into three parts. First is the G1 phase, second is the S phase, and third is the G2 phase. Now in this G1 phase, what happens? The cell growth takes place. The cell begins to grow. The cell starts preparing itself for cell division. The cell grows and the normal functioning of the cell occurs in this G1 phase. This G1 phase is also called as the first period of growth of the cell or first growth period of the cell. So in this G1 phase, the cell grows or the growth of the cell takes place. Normal functioning of the cell occurs. Organelles which are present inside the cell, those organelles, they get duplicated or they get divided, or the organelles get duplicated. The similar organelles are formed inside the cell. And also RNA synthesis occurs in the G1 phase of the cell cycle. Now this G1 phase, it lasts for about 8 hours. The next phase is the S phase. Now S phase, here replication of DNA takes place. Synthesis or replication of DNA takes place, and protein is also synthesized. That protein is called as histone. Now synthesis, as this phase is a synthesis phase, DNA is synthesized and histone protein is synthesized. So that's why this phase is called as S phase or synthesis phase. Now this S phase, it lasts for about 6 to 8 hours. The next is the G2 phase. G2 phase, in this phase, protein synthesis occurs. The cell undergoes synthesis of various proteins, or the cell undergoes in the synthesis of different proteins, and metabolic activities also occur which are needed or which are required for the further cell division process. So in this G2 phase, the synthesis of proteins takes place and metabolic activities which are needed for the further cell division also take place. That's why this G2 phase is also called as second growth phase of the cell. And this G2 phase, it lasts for about 2 to 5 hours. The next is the M phase. M phase is further divided into 4 phases, that is prophase, metaphase, anaphase and telophase. Now in this M phase, M stands for either mitosis or meiosis. Now in this M phase, the cell undergoes 2 types of stages or 2 types of division. That is, first one is the karyokinesis. Karyokinesis means division of the nucleus which is present inside the cell. So karyokinesis, it is the division of nucleus which is there inside the cell to form 2 daughter nuclei. This is, we are talking about the M phase. So in the M phase, the cell undergoes these processes. First is karyokinesis. In karyokinesis, the division of the nuclei takes place, division of the nucleus takes place, which is inside the cell. And this division further leads to form two daughter nuclei. For example, suppose this is a cell, and the nucleus which is there inside it, it starts dividing, and finally it divides into two daughter nuclei. The second process, that is cytokinesis. Cytokinesis, it is the division of cytoplasm of the cell. It is division of cytoplasm of the cell, and this division of cytoplasm results in formation of two individual daughter cells. Now here the division of nucleus has taken place. Further, what happens? This cytoplasm is present surrounding the nucleus. This cytoplasm divides itself. For suppose this is the cell, there are two daughter nuclei in it. After this, what happens? The cell or the cytoplasm which is there, it divides into two new cells. Two new daughter cells are formed. This process is called as the cytokinesis. In cytokinesis, the cytoplasm which surrounds the nucleus of the cell, it divides itself, and it divides in to result the formation of two daughter nuclei, or sorry, two daughter cells. So this is the process of cell cycle, or this is the process of cell division. Cell cycle has two main phases. First is the interphase. This interphase is the longest phase in the cell cycle. In this phase, the cell prepares itself for cell division. Now there are three parts of interphase. First is the G1 phase, that is the first growth period of the cell. In this, the cell growth takes place, the normal cell function occurs, as well as the duplication of organelles takes place, and RNA is also synthesized in this phase, G1 phase. That's why it is called as the first growth period of the cell. It occurs as soon as the cell divides. It occurs as soon as the cell gets divided, new cell is formed. This G1 phase starts occurring, or this cell starts undergoing the G1 stage. So the second stage is the second phase is the S phase, that is called as synthesis phase. In this phase, the replication of RNA takes place, or the cell undergoes the replication of DNA takes place, not RNA. So here the cell undergoes the replication of DNA, and also a protein called as histone is produced or is synthesized. That's why this phase is called as the S phase. The third phase is the G2 phase. In this phase, proteins are synthesized and various metabolic activities occur inside the cell. Those metabolic activities which are necessary for cell division, for further cell division. So those metabolic activities, they occur inside the cell. And this G2 phase is called as the second growth period of the cell cycle. And after this comes the M phase. M phase is divided into four parts, that is four phases, that is prophase, metaphase, anaphase and telophase. Now in these four phases, during these four phases, the cell undergoes two processes. First is karyokinesis. Karyokinesis means the division of the nucleus which is present inside the cell to form two daughter nuclei. That is karyokinesis. And the second process, that is cytokinesis. Cytokinesis is the process in which the cytoplasm of the cell gets divided into two new separate daughter cells.